Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, June 24th. Great to have you along. It's been a week of excess. City Council says too many people are panhandling too close to our intersections. Are they? County Council says too many people are abusing bath salts. And Kent State says it has too many people who want to be freshmen. Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Hope you're enjoying your summer. Great to have you along for some hot conversations. Let's get to it. Joining us this week, Tim Riddell from WKSU. And great to welcome Marilyn Miller from the Akron Beacon Journal.
Hi.
All right, and we talk about these panhandlers. This is something that everybody has seen at pretty much every intersection around. Some of it is from the economy. Some of it, I think, is just copycats. City of Akron with its own ordinance that grants these licenses or ID tags for some of these folks. We now have nearly as many people with the ID tags in Akron as we do police officers. Now City Council looks at this legislation and says we have so many of them that are out there just holding signs. We can't have them near the intersections. Do you think the people are going to buy into this?
Well, I'm not sure whether they're buying into it or not, but I think I guess the real question is as a practical thing, is it going to make any difference? And no, probably not. I mean, I think a mistake that a lot of us make, I know I certainly do, is when I think about things like the problem of indigent people, the panhandler on the corner at Perkins, every morning. I tend to think that person is having the same thoughts and feelings and responses to things that I am, and he may be, but he may also, in the case of a lot of these folks who are out on the street, he may have various emotional, behavioral, mental, I guess. Nowadays you'd say deficits. Mm-hmm. This person may not be responding and thinking about things the same as you, me, or somebody else. And I think when we try to regulate this stuff, it's kind of important to realize that this may not work the way you think it will. And I think, these are, in some cases, people who got absolutely nothing. They may have a sense of desperation, and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Practical, Marilyn, you think, to try to legislate them away from intersections?
I don't know if it's practical, but I think they need to try. It makes me very uncomfortable to stop at an intersection, and I hate when I get caught by the light, and they're like right there, and you're like fumbling through looking for change or whatever, but if you don't have anything, and then they're right there, it's like breathing down your neck, thinking, well, are you going to give it up? Are you going to give it up? And you're waiting, please let the light change, because I don't have any money, I don't know what they're going to do. So I would hope that they could be just a little bit further back and not so close to you when you're stopping for that light. And they're very close, very close. I've seen them in wheelchairs, and lately they've been more pitiful than just standing there with their signs. And I also cover the Fairlawn area, and they're really prevalent out in the Fairlawn area where, like 60,000 people come in to shop or work. And some of the signs are pretty specific, saying, just give me enough money to take my kids to the zoo. And if that was really the case, then yeah, give them the money to take, are you going to come back? Just, we'll give you the money if you just don't come back all the time. But day after day, it's the same people, and they just have different signs, maybe just a new venture that they want to go to. So.
Well, like there's you mentioned about the use of the money and so forth. There's one elderly lady in a wheelchair who, is, as you say, kind of a pitiful figure. And I frequently drive by an intersection where she is. And the one thing I've noticed is that every time I've driven by, she's been smoking. Now, I don't smoke myself, but I've seen the price of cigarettes in the drugstore. They cost a lot of money. And I'm not saying that this, I have no doubt this woman is dirt poor and in a terrible circumstance. But the point is that these folks probably are not making the wisest decisions about what they do. And again, this goes back to the fact that a lot of them don't have the capacity to make wise decisions.
Well, 2 points of clarification. One is the city ID tags that are given out to anyone who applies, provided they don't have a previous conviction for panhandling. And that means they can have other convictions, but it doesn't create that sense of security that the city somehow checked these people out, because that isn't true. And the second one comes from the city that they say that legally, if all you do is hold a sign, that's free speech. It's not panhandling. Panhandling is when someone actually comes up to you to ask you something. So knowing that, is it even enforceable for what council's about to do to say, let's keep people away from these intersections? And for a smaller police force, how can they really, if it falls on them, really be expected to enforce something like this?
Well, I mean, that's a good point, because whether these folks have problems or whether they're out of money or whatever their circumstance is, for the most part, these are still citizens. I mean, they have a right to be on a public street the same as you or anybody else does.
You expect the ACLU maybe get involved in this?
I don't know that it would rise to the level of their attention, but I could see something like that happening. And now, agreeing with Marilyn, on the other hand, the city's got to do something. I mean, I literally have had these folks knock on my window, my car. It doesn't bother me in particularly, but if there are a lot of other people who, that might be very intimidating. My wife, very small woman, that would be intimidating. Have some guy beating on the,
Sure.
The glass. So the city's got to do something. I just kind of am pessimistic that this will do any good.
Yeah, and once they see the badge, there really isn't anything they can do. The guidelines are very slim, and there used to be just men out there, but now they're women. I haven't seen children yet. They haven't brought them in.
Well, actually, in Akron, not, but they are there. I spent many years until just recently, as Eric probably knows, working in Washington, D.C. And Washington, for a lot of reasons, including its size. I mean, it's a huge city. Its climate, where living on the streets is a more accomplishable thing than it is here. It gets cold in the winter there, but they have steam grates. You can and the exhaust systems from the metro. So and literally people live on those. So there's a huge population of indigent people around Washington. And when I first started to encounter that 25 years ago, it was men, probably 40 plus, that you would almost always see on the street. Now it's probably majority late teen, 20-somethings, and in some cases literally kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can tell they're 12, 14 years old. So that has changed, and in some places, including there. And, it's...
It just takes your breath away.
It does.
Well, as we look from that legislation to county council, and Marilyn, you've already written about this, these bath salts. I think many in the public are still trying to figure out what the heck this is. Are these just things that you sprinkle in your bath to, make a nicer bath? But nevertheless, they're being abused as a drug. What do you think county council is trying to accomplish here?
Well, it's going to be hard to stop it. I know, because people just go into the other county. Just like now, Barberton has passed legislation to prevent the selling of it, distribution of it, because you can get it at any convenience store. Not the big, the big gas stations, but the mom and pop corner store or drive-throughs, and you might be able to do something with the distribution. But then, even if you can't get it at these little corner stores, mm-hmm. you can get it on the internet. You can buy it on the internet, and
so
it's. Oh yeah, they inhale it, they snort it, some even inject it, and they sell it as bath salts. They also sell it as plant food, and it's just dangerous. I talked to a couple people who have actually used it, and they say it's just really bad stuff. And you're going to abuse some kind of drug on the street anyway, but people will find some kind of synthetic drug to use. But this was really a surprise.
Yeah, very, very scary, and we'll talk more about it now as we move the conversation to the internet and newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
We are now about 4 weeks away from the annual All-American Soapbox Derby. It gets all eyes from the nation on Akron, Ohio, but the Derby continues to struggle both financially and in getting racers. Earlier this week, Jody had a chance to sit down with Bill Ginter and Joe Mazur from the Derby.
What do you both see as the future of the All-American Soapbox Derby? Bill? It's a self-sustaining organization that's receiving sufficient funding and sufficient sponsorships that it can continue to grow the Derby nationally, and that Akron gets even more connected to the Derby than maybe it's been of late, and recognizes that once a year, 180 or so cities send people here, thousands of people, to go to the hill. You cannot overestimate the importance of that hill to these racers, and that this is a big deal nationally. And as it's kind of like we're throwing a house party. Okay. And when we throw a house party as a community, we want to make that the most successful house party we can. It's up to Joe, I, and the board and the staff to make the community more aware of that and get them more involved, because we need to add some value to them being there so that we host the best blasted championship race we possibly can.
Those who race in the Derby still say it's the greatest sport out there. Joining us now is Phil Trexler from the Akron Beacon-Journal. I want to thank Tim for being part of the discussion. Okay, we've talked about the Derby ad nauseum at times here, but as we listen to Bill Ginter there talking about the Derby and the struggles that are there, is somebody going to come up with a new way to get this going? Because otherwise it feels like we're doing the annual garage sale to keep this thing afloat.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that they've never been able to find a solid sponsor. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised at that. I know that the economic times are difficult and companies are cutting back instead of spending money, but it just seems like it's the All-American Soapbox Derby. It's apple pie, Chevrolet, mom. Mm-hmm. It seems like a natural fit for Goodyear, but
Or Chevrolet, come back.
Yeah, or Chevrolet, or NASCAR seemed like it was going to be a good thing for it.
Mm-hmm.
That fell apart. It's just, it's part of Americana. It's certainly, it takes, Akron back to its past. It's one of the last vestiges of its history, and it's unfortunate. But that's what it needs is a solid sponsor. And the audit conducted earlier this year came back good. Mm-hmm. They're not bleeding money like they had in the past. They still have their debt. They still took, some money from the city of Akron, some subsidies from them. But they seem to be on better footing, solid footing, endured the difficulties that they had, and they seem to be on the right path. I mean, they just need a shot in the arm.
It does bring millions of dollars every year for that week. I mean, it loads up our hotels and our restaurants, and the families are already, some of them paying thousands of dollars just to get here. So I don't think it's a matter of just increasing the fees for the racers and their families, because some of them are spending so much money, just to get to Akron, Ohio. But, and we do this every few years. There are a lot of communities across the country that would kill to have something like this that would bring millions of dollars in 1 week a year.
I know there have been overtures made by other cities to try to lure the Derby away from it. And Akron can't afford to lose it. I mean, it brings people to town. It puts Akron again on the map, and you certainly have to keep it there. I mean, Marilyn's been in Akron her whole life.
It's hard to watch because I was raised in Akron, grew up with the Derby. My father was a supervisor in the park, so we were actually in the parades.
Nice.
And would see all the well-known celebrities coming to town. And it's hard to recapture the past, I know, but if they could just, do something more exciting that involves more than just the parents and family members of the participants in it. But I don't know how they're going to do that. It's, I thought about, when I was on an airplane, maybe they could have order forms in the little magazines that are on the airplanes to try to sell something. I actually had a friend encouraged to start the Derby in Houston, Texas, so that because she grew up in this area, but I don't know how it all comes together. I don't know if it's a marketing. Well, obviously, part of it is a marketing problem, but you hate to see it go, but you hate that it's in the financial. I don't know how it survived as long as it has, but the fact that it has, I think it can make it. Maybe the film. 25 Hill is going to help.
And that's where I was going. Is there's a trailer out. The film's going to be out here in the next few weeks by Corbin Burnson called 25 Hill. It's going to get some play nationally. It's not going to be a major summer blockbuster. But is it going to take something extreme to get them the dollars they really need just to be stable? Because right now it just seems like they're staying afloat.
Maryland, the interest in it, I guess, is down. It's not what it was in the 30s and 40s. Kids nowadays look for instant gratification, not going 20 miles an hour down a slow hill. I mean, the interest is still there. It's not what it used to be, but it's still I think a viable part of the community. And 25 Hill can only help. Mm-hmm. It's a legitimate film made by a legitimate Hollywood actor and producer. And it's certainly going to bring some attention back to the Derby. Sure. I question whether this next generation of kids is really into it as much as the past. Certainly they're not, but it's still a viable part of the Akron's history. And I think the financial part is getting there. They need to survive this the Great Recession here and move forward. And hopefully they will. Even
more global. It's becoming more global.
Mm-hmm.
Notice that more kids taking part of it from internationally, so that's helped a little bit. But I don't know if it's just the economy. I think if they went back to the big parades and bringing in celebrities, I don't know. I really liked that. I really liked that. That was a lot of fun.
It is,
and it involved a lot of people in the community.
Sure, I've never met anybody whose kids took part or they took part who didn't have an enjoyable time. But it's just a matter of getting families involved at the local level, but keeping the All-American here. I think everybody wants to keep it here, but it may be a point where we're taking it for granted. What some people have taken for granted, though, is the ability to put out an American flag if you feel like it, at your own property. This week, a lot of controversy in Macedonia as a veteran erects a 14-foot flagpole and flies his American flag, only to have his association of his neighborhood tell him, you can't do that. It needs to be on your home. It needs to be on wood. He says he doesn't have wood. And now we're looking at quite a fight that could end up in court. Big picture, do some of these associations have rules that just have no leeway, that make it impossible for someone to, in this case, fly an American flag?
I just like how this issue is really like polarizing people. There's people on one side who are saying, hey, it's Old Glory, let her fly high, and the other side saying, well, rules are rules, and you signed up for this, and it is a great debate, and it's always fascinating to watch these condo association groups try to enforce their rules, and the people who signed up making a pass and trying to circumvent those rules. And here's a guy who fought for his country. He wants to hang his flag outside of his condo, and he's gaining resistance. It's it's a natural story for people to really join into a debate, and it's fun to watch. And these types of things frequently do wind up in court, and that it appears to be where it could be heading. It was just a phenomenal response to the story throughout Northeast Ohio this week.
Sure.
I mean, how are you going to win against a vet who wants to hang his flag out?
Exactly.
He's proud, and then the condo needs to give it up.
I know. Yeah.
There are rules that don't. They just make up rules, and I don't believe that the residents in that condo agreed that it has to be a specific way. I just think those are rules that were set down, and nobody really paid attention until this came up, and then it was like, for real? This is really a rule?
My question, too, is this a fight that you really want to fight?
Right.
I mean, the condo association is not going to look good going after a veteran who wants to hang his flag outside of his condo. They're just not going to look good.
Doesn't that beg the question of, why didn't they think like this before they laid down the law on this guy? In other words, this didn't just happen last week. He's been fighting for some time to get his flag up there. I wonder why the association didn't just get together as a group and say, hey, if this ever makes it into the papers and on TV,
they weren't thinking.
We're not going to look good.
Yeah, and I think Marilyn's right. Maybe they weren't looking ahead at this. I mean, the condo association group, there are rules and bylines that they are assigned to enforce. When you move into the condo association group, you agree to pay these fees, and you agree to follow the rules. And I don't think they certainly expected the backlash that they got. It doesn't appear they couldn't have, because, I mean, it's certainly a strong reaction.
When you talk about Old Glory, you're definitely going to get people's attention.
Right.
And certainly a topic for us to discuss right here on NewsNite.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
And again, we invite you to watch the extended edition of our interviews over on NewsNite.net. Well, a good problem for Kent State, so to say. Too many people want to be students here. Guys, they have over 18,000 applications to be freshmen for the fall, so they finally cut it off. First time they've had to do that. Last year they only took 4,000 actual freshmen. What's this say about the big picture of higher education, that they've got so many at a public school that's right here for so many, and marketed to them as, hey, come to Kent State and be a freshman?
You can't get a job, go to school. It usually reflects the economy. You have the enrollment is always up when the economy is not so good. I was talking to a neighbor this weekend, and he mentioned to his son, honey, go to, maybe you should go to, get your master's. And he said, well, I can't see doing that, Dad, when my first degree didn't get me anything. I can't see taking the time to go back to school and hope for a better job with more education. And the father was surprised because he thought, well, he goes to college, he gets a degree, and now he's really thinking. And I can't really tell him any differently because, maybe it isn't a good thing for him to go back. But he can't find a job. And I really hate to admit this, but when I got out of college, I couldn't find a job, and I went back to school. So it encouraged me to get my master's, and glad I did now, but that's what I'm finding. Well, I can't find a job, so maybe I should go to school. But it is hard to try to justify that education when they get that degree and you tell them that they need that degree, and then they still can't find a job.
Yeah, and I think that this is nothing new. This is a trend that's been going on for the past 2-3 years, ever since the recession hit. College enrollment has just been spiking, and it continues. It hasn't receded at all, and it's good for Kent State. Our teenagers are told you're not going to go anywhere without an education, and
that's where we were raised.
Yeah, and they're learning it, and it's good. I think it's good for Ohio. Certainly, there are no high-paying jobs out there for 18 and 19-year-olds. There are no manufacturing jobs for people to go to. So the best place to go is to college and to learn some sort of trade or some kind of profession.
It may be that that's happened, but are you still surprised in the amount of stories that we've all done on the high cost of college, that so many of these kids are willing to take on this, what could be an exorbitant debt by the time they graduate?
How many are taking out loans, too? I mean, that's a big one. There's grants and loans that are available. Parents have supposedly been saving for college. But let's face it, if you have no job to go to, it generally means you don't have a whole lot of money to begin with, and therefore you qualify for the grants and the loans. And some kids are staying in school too to avoid repaying the loans because you don't have to start repaying them until you leave school. So college can hold back those payments and delay delay getting a job until you come back and the economy settles and there are better opportunities out there.
And some have discovered that if you go to some of the campuses, Kent State has neighboring campuses. It's a little bit cheaper to attend those, so they can save a little money that way and still earn their degrees. And if they have to take some of the core classes, they can get that out of the way at some of the other campuses.
So how do we do a better job in Northeast Ohio of giving them light at the end of the tunnel so that if they are willing to commit to going to college in Northeast Ohio, and we're at capacity at Akron and Kent both now, that there's going to be reason for them to stay?
Yeah, that's just it.
Yeah,
they don't.
Yeah.
They don't stay.
Well, it's about job creation too. Right. I mean, that's what you're hoping that the folks down in Columbus and the governor are doing, working to create jobs and in a better employment environment. That's not here yet, and that's why the enrollment's up. Everyone's going to college, and there's got to be jobs waiting for these guys when they graduate. And if they're not going to be here, then they're going to be down south or out west, and that's where these, there's still going to be that flight that we've witnessed throughout this decade of our college graduates, our best students leaving here after graduating because there's no, employment opportunities, and hopefully you want to stop that bleeding.
Even at community colleges, the enrollments are up. People are trying to learn a trade. And I've known people that maybe gotten a degree here and then gone back to like Tri-C just to get a trade. Because their bachelor's didn't help them.
Are you surprised, though, at the marketing of it all? Because it used to just be about the education, and now the campuses themselves have become, such a big draw as far as what they offer in the dorms and in the amenities and in the physical fitness activities and things like that, that they're really selling the whole experience.
Yeah, I think Proenza started that. I mean, he's been on TV advertising. He's become the figure for the University of Akron, and they really have marketed that campus very well. I think, in the 90s, and it was viewed as a commuter campus and not a very attractive one, but Proenza has marketed it through television advertising and also construction there at Akron, and turned it into a campus that people are wanting to come to. And look at the number of dorms that have been built up around the campus and outside the campus. So they've done a great job of selling Akron, and Kent State's the same way. I know Dr. Lefton has talked about an expansion program of infrastructure building and buildings and physical. On the physical campus to expand and to update. So yeah, it's certainly a big part because kids want to have some enjoyment when they come to college.
Yeah, drop your jaw.
Make it a college town.
Exactly, right.
I was going to say, drop your jaw a little bit based on the campuses you saw here years ago, how they look now.
Right. They're certainly not going to sell the campus through sports. They're their sports teams, so they're going to have to do something there to take their mind off the studies.
Right. Well, that education will continue to be a topic for us when we come back in the fall. I want to thank Phil and Marilyn and Tim as well, and let everyone know that this show will be going on hiatus for the summer. We will return on September 2nd, so we can bring you 2 Good Friday broadcasts before the September 13th local primary, and we'll look at obviously the mayoral primary that's coming up and the other things that are coming up then on the November ballot. We appreciate you spending your Friday nights with us, and again, encourage you to go to newsnight.net to watch extended editions of our interviews as well as our discussions. It's always great to see you here on a Friday night. I hope you have a great summer, and we'll see you back here again beginning September 2nd for Newsnight. Good night.